topic because we are celebrating the World Day for African and Afro-Descendant culture. And because of that, the Pan-African Writers Association, the Writers of African Descent in Diaspora, as well as UNESCO, have come together to mark this occasion. And the theme of today's discussion will be resilience and technological innovation within African and Afro-descendant communities. And like I said, we're going to have a very lively discussion. Professor Lahid from Algeria has already started. He was very much ready. He was already sharing his lecture. I had to ask him to slow down because he has a lot of stuff to give us today. But before we go to the panelists, it's my pleasure to quickly call on the UNESCO program manager in Ghana, Mr. Carl Ampa, to give us a background information about today's celebration. Mr. Ampa, I hope you are on.
I'm here, Doc. And how are you too?
Thank you. Please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very, very much. And wherever everybody is, I extend the greetings of UNESCO to you. I'm going to go directly to the statement of the UNESCO Director General and read it. I'm actually in a car, so I had to stop and then be able to read the statement. Okay. So Africa, like the world, like the universe, is a vast ocean, deep, multidimensional, rich, varied, complex, agitated by countless currents, constantly evolving and changing. These words, pronounced by Henry Lopez, former Prime Minister of the Congo, writer, and the Congo's ambassador and permanent delegate to UNESCO, celebrate the richness of African and Afro-descendant heritage, a transatlantic heritage with both uniqueness and plurality, carrying memories of slavery and cultural practices shared throughout the world. From the traditional knowledge and practices for the making and consumption of cassava bread in Côte d'Ivoire, Cuba, Haiti, and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, to the practice of balafon and kolitang, xylophones in Burkina Faso and Indonesia, respectively, this heritage is embodied in properties, practices, and natural sites of extraordinary diversity. In line with the Charter for African Cultural Renaissance, adopted by the African Union in 2006, and echoing the African Union theme for 2025, Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations. On this World Day, UNESCO is celebrating the vitality of cultural expressions from African diasporas and Afro-descendants. In 2024, our organization celebrated the inscription of 5 new African properties on the representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity, bringing the number of living heritage elements on the continent inscribed on the list to 108. Our commitment will continue in 2025 under Global Priority Africa, as we will be registering new sites, and Africa will soon be home to 100 UNESCO biosphere reserves. At the same time, our organization will continue to build the capacity of conservation experts through its monitoring program, which has already trained over 60 young African professionals in the skills associated with heritage preservation. This coordinated action to promote and enhance African heritage also relies on increased documentation efforts. UNESCO is also continuing its series of reports on the cultural and creative industries in Africa, the latest of which concerns the book and publishing industry and will be published in 2025. On this day, UNESCO is reaffirming its commitment to integrating the 11 countries that are not yet represented on the World Heritage List. thereby enhancing the value of African and Afro-descendant culture. UNESCO thus calls on all members of the international community to celebrate the creative power of the African continent. In the words of historian Membe, Africa is both a power in reserve and a reserve of power, a vital force, a potential for originality. This ends the Director General's statement. And I'll just add a few comments of what has happened in Ghana, so that people also have an idea. Yesterday, for example, there was a concert at the Alliance Française, that was used to mark the richness of African history and culture through the arts. And then at the National Theatre also, there was a theatrical and orchestral premiere of the Mansa World performance that brings to life the legendary story of the Mali Emperor Mansa Musa. And then this webinar that is being organized by PAWA and writers of African origin in the diaspora in collaboration with UNESCO with the theme Resilience and Technological Innovation within African and Afro-descendant culture. Certainly, these events express the profound contributions of African and Afro-descendant communities to humanity's shared cultural heritage and highlight Ghana's dedication to preserving and promoting African heritage while fostering meaningful dialogue around its continued evolution. So, Dr. Wale, I hand it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ampa. We appreciate UNESCO's support all the time in our zeal and eagerness to promote African culture and both at home and diaspora. Now, I'll go to the panel and give them 2 minutes each to introduce themselves. And I will start with Professor Light Zaglami from Algeria. Your introduction, sir.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Wale. I'm grateful and indebted to you and to people with you, and pleased to be part of this webinar. Well, actually, I just want to highlight the background of the situation in Africa, and to start with, so it's have to admit that African continent is facing growing number of challenges and risks that can derive from the development trajectory, and of course,
Prof,
one of
sorry to stop you, Prof. Just introduce yourself for now. Then we'll come back to the discussion. Just let us know. We want you to introduce yourself. We want to know you, your background, people want to know a little about you before we start the discussion. Introduce yourself.
Yeah. Well, I'm a humble self professor at University of Algiers, Faculty of Information and Communication. And besides that, I've been writing extensively on because I used to be a journalist. So now I am, while I am academic scholars, I am also political analyst within the Algerian media. And of course, right now I've been involved in series of seminars, webinars, and workshops within the African Union, and of course, and mainly regarding the media in the continent. So I feel like I'm very pleased that I visited so many African countries like Senegal, Ethiopia, Kenya, Ghana, of course, and Nigeria, your country. Besides that, I went to Mauritius and South Africa. So overall, I feel confident. I feel really pleased to have discovered my continent, and I am thrilled and inspired by the Pan-Africanism and Africa Rising. That's what I have been striving and fighting on the international arena. So I feel like I am indebted. I would say I am indebted to the continent, and within this turmoil in the world politics, Africa has to find its own place, and we deserve to have our own block for lobbying to secure the future of our generation. This is what Agenda 263 wants to achieve.
Thank you so much, Prof. We'll come back to you. Can we hear from Maria Biswalo? Please, can you unmute yourself, introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Maria Biswalo, and I am from Tanzania. I am an international educator, currently based in Denmark. I have worked extensively, mostly in academia, well, in schools. I am a specialist in the autism spectrum disorder and elementary education. I am a mother and newly author of children's books. And yeah, and I'm pleased to be here and to share my expertise and experience with you.
Thank you. Congratulations on your new book. We hope to see it very soon. Now we go to Chenai Dunduru from Zimbabwe.
Hello. Thank you all for this wonderful opportunity to be joining here to PAWA and to... My name is Chenai Dunduru and I'm Zimbabwean, currently in Australia, where I was pursuing my studies, which I finished in 2023. I'm an accountant of more than 6 years, although I have an interest in public health, which is why I'm a health economist in training. I am a junior researcher as well in academics, and I'm an author of 9 books now, mainly in my native language and a bit of English. And I'm happy to be here to share the little bit that I know towards innovation and technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Chenai. You are welcome. And let's welcome a very known face, but we are never tired of hearing from him. Professor Bill Indy, please let us know who you are.
Thank you, Dr. Wale, and thanks, Mr. Carl Amper, the UNESCO representative, for giving us this opportunity. My name is Bill Indy. I'm a professor of modern languages, communications, and philosophy, and I'm based at Tuskegee University. I know Tuskegee University is well represented in the audience, and I would like to take the opportunity to welcome all of them. Besides being an academic, I'm an author of many books, upward of 50. So I will pause right there. I'm just delighted that we are talking about resilience and technological innovation, because it is something that cuts directly across the heart of the book industry or what we live for. So I will pause at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Indy. And I must say that Professor Indy has been working honestly with PAWA to put together another similar organization for writers of African origin in diaspora, WAFORD. And he's heading that unit, and I want to thank him enormously for what he has done. Thank you. We'll come back to you. The last panelist, Professor Remi Raji from Nigeria, will be joining us later on, unless I don't think he has joined. Professor Raji, are you here? Okay, no, he's not here yet. He will join us later. So I think we should just give the floor straight away to Professor Laid, because he has been so passionate to deliver his powerful statement all the way from Algeria. Professor Laid, you have the floor. 15 minutes.
How many minutes, Dr. Ewen?
15 minutes.
Really?
15.
15. 1-5.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
1-5.
Good.
Yes.
That's very good. That's enough. Okay. Thank you very much once again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. I'm so pleased to be part of this webinar. So to start with, it's more important that we have to remind ourselves that our continent is confronted with a series of growing number of structural issues, challenges, and risks that can really undermine the development trajectory of the continent. And those issues are so complex and unpredictable. As a result, there are a lot of difficulties and losses in life and livelihoods on the continent. In this context, we have to to safeguard the development gain and reducing these losses by virtue of resilience. And if I may remind ourselves and you, African Union has embarked on a very inspiring and very promising agenda called 2063, the Africa we want. That exactly. So we have our leader who are thinking of the future of the continent. And among the objectives and the main objectives of this agenda is a concrete manifestation of the Pan-African drive for unity, self-determination, freedom, progress, and collective prosperity under the Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance. So, nevertheless, the path is not without difficulties. And of course, as I said earlier, our continent is confronted with pertinent and structural challenges such as extreme poverty, climate change, food and security, conflict and stability, governance, and of course, question of technology and innovation. So to start with, what does it mean, resilience? Resilience, as from my own understanding and for my own research, is a system property that needs to be assessed and understood in the African context. In other words, it expressed as an aspiration and policy objective to secure progress in sustainable development. We have, when we speak about resilience, it's a matter of thinking. So when we adopt resilient thinking, it includes transformation, managing the fundamental change, and of course present the possibility to identify the pathway and forward are desirable. Resilience thinking goes beyond framing resilience, but as the ability to withstand shocks and enable us to distinguish between the capacity to maintain a system in its current situation. So understanding resilience in the African context, we should consider the following facts. First of all, or I would say first point is identify components and dimension of resilience critical for the African context to develop resilience programs as well as policies. Also to support measuring progress on resilience at national level and continental level. Resilience, it means also a means of transformation. A means of transformation, as there is growing concern, or I would say growing consensus on the speed and the scale of innovation, science, environmental and justice, biodiversity loss, income inequalities, and so forth. This entails us to reconfigure our knowledge. We have to reconfigure our knowledge, our technology, our knowledge in technology, institution, and mode of doing business, as well personal and socio-cultural behaviors and meaning. So we have to transform ourselves and we have to adapt. So there are three concepts: transformation, transformability, and adaptability. So transformation is a typical knowledge. It is typically known to involve changes in future, like power relation, institution, resources, and technology, and so forth. Transformation or transformability in social ecological system is defined as the capacity to create and beginnings which to evolve a fundamental new way of living when existing ecological, economy, and social condition make the current system untenable. So we have to secure the desirable environment for resilience. And this requires a good governance and efficient public service delivery, economic diversification, and decent job creation quality education, healthcare and social protection, food and energy sovereignty, enhanced infrastructure and innovation, dynamic private sector and vibrant civil society, and of course, sustainable natural resources management, security and social cohesion. Besides that, we have to remind again that for Africa, there is a strategy in science, technology, innovation, and this strategy consists of accelerating the transition of African countries to become innovation-led and knowledge-based economy. So we have to embrace technology and innovation, and of course, this will be achieved by improving science, technology, and innovation in Africa and implementing specific policies and the programs which address societal needs in holistic and sustainable way. As a matter of fact, the African continent, the African Union, has already developed a project called Science, Technology and Innovation Initiative, and it aims to strengthen the capacity of Africans to develop and use the indicator in planning policy at national, regional, and continental level. The role of innovation in this case is to transform the economy and increase social resilience of the long-term process of sustainable development. What are the perspectives on innovation and development and technology? I would say theoretical perspectives on innovation and technology explore the role of innovation policy in successful examples of resilient and sustainable development, and of course understand how innovation is related to measure structural change is understood and implemented. More than that, this indicator of innovation and technological innovation, they will be, of course, they will encourage economic development and transformation, including innovation system, technology transfer, social capabilities, economic complexity, market state relation, trade relation, and so forth. There was, besides this initiative, there was another, I would say, project supported by USAID agency towards Africa by the creation. This is completely for me new, the role of Resilient African Network. What does it mean? This body offers an exciting, it's made of African scholars and of course visionary people who are working on innovation and resilience. So the role of Resilient African Network offers an exciting opportunity to tap into the capacities of African universities, focus on their collective energies and delivering practical enduring solution to the continent most vulnerable community. So we really need to support and to coordinate with this Resilient Africa Network as it focuses on community capacity and use those points, of course, as to strengthen social economic development and technological innovation. I think we should have get in touch with these people who are leading the action of resilience in the area of technology and innovation. And they are, as I said, they are composed of Resilient African Network, composed of scholars in different parts of Africa. In conclusion, and this is my conclusion. Of course, I will answer any question. I didn't want to go into further details, but I am here to give you some example from the Algerian experience, maybe in North Africa too. So in conclusion, resilience as a term should not be a state of mind of obstruction or opposition, should not be static or dogmatic, but rather one of pragmatic approach and realistic approach. In other words, nevertheless, we must bear in mind that technological innovation, which is neither innocent nor natural, should be and must not uproot our values and principles. While we keep ourselves open to technology, to all development, Africa's path to resilience depends on how it meets the challenge we face in technology and other social and economic problems, but also to unlock, to open up opportunities for the future of generation. In other words, we cannot just keep our eyes blind, but we have to open up with being very cautious when it comes to embracing technological programs. This one, when it is implemented, we have to adapt it to our situation. In other words, we don't have to uproot our dignity, our independence, our value, our personality, and our Pan-Africanism. Thank you very much.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Professor Lai, for that powerful opening statement. And I think we heard you loud and clear that while Africa must embrace technology, we must not lose our dignity, our independence, and our Pan-Africanism. This is a wonderful point you have made. Thank you. We'll quickly go on to Zimbabwe and hear something from the Zimbabwe experience, even though China is currently enjoying the luxury of another country, but once a Zimbabwe, always a Zimbabwe. So over to you, Chennai.
Thank you, Dr. Wali. And I just want to point out, thank you. I would like to acknowledge again PAWA and Forward for this opportunity. And it's a wonderful theme that we're having, especially in this technological era that we are in. It's important. I just want to note that you just said, I'm enjoying the luxuries here, but currently where I am right now, there was introduced internet connectivity a few years ago. All this while, there was no internet connectivity. And we are in Australia, and you're wondering, how is that so? What is the issue? What is the problem? There are some cultures still here who are saying, we do not want to be polluted. We are happy in our own way, and they've been managing over the years. It's only recently that I'm also able to connect in this part of Australia where I am. So now back to Zimbabwe, where I spent 95% of my life in. We come from a historical, resilient background as a continent as well, because of colonialism and the slavery, which even now has still shaped us. And while I'm talking, I just want to refer back to what Professor just said, that we should not let technology uproot our values and our principles. Yes, we need to embrace technology, but we need to maintain who we are as a people. So my discussion is based on unity, innovation, and cultural pride, which are all assembled in resilience while embracing technology. Like I said, I'm coming from an accounting/health background, where I like to see the intersection of technology and healthcare to improve outcomes. But does that mean we are going to ignore or set aside how we've been treating diseases in an African context? No, we are not. Are we going to change our way of thinking because of technology? No. So back again to the issue of historical resilience. If you look at how we managed as a continent, how we embraced even back then, our Pan-Africanism. During the liberation struggles, we hear Zimbabwe, Zambia, Tanzania, Mozambique, they are all cooperating. In their ways, there was still a bit of technological advancement in weaponry and etc., which helped us even win our war. What kept us resilient was we kept on leaning back to our traditional leaders who, again, led our liberation struggles, the first one, the second one, and more recently, the third one. But why are we having a third liberation struggle after independence? it all comes to moving with the times. We are being resilient up to a certain point where we get uncomfortable with the situation. That's where we look at the transformative nature, which again, Professor was alluding to. So now, in the interest of the current times, you see in Zimbabwe, we have been faced with hyperinflation, massive hyperinflation for more than a decade. But there is still, you see businesses blooming, but they are blooming on an informal scale. Like now, there is maybe more than 50% of business is being done on WhatsApp. Why on WhatsApp? We are resilient in such a way that we are also trying to manage, we are withstanding our situation in a way that's comfortable to us in its discomfort, if that makes sense. Doing business on WhatsApp can be viewed as unprofessional on a Western context or even on a formal context, but we are doing that. We are adapting to the situation. We've embraced technology. We are going to use WhatsApp. Yes, it's foreign to us. We are going to manage our business in an informal way. Less taxis, less set up costs and the like, but we are managing to maintain our families from those businesses done on WhatsApp. Again, if you look on a more formal scale, we had cash shortages in Zimbabwe, where people had to be married off. Each time you're in a commuter omnibus, they have no change. They marry you off to whoever you're working with. Go find change for yourselves, you too. But now we had eco cash, we had people evolved mechanisms to manage the situation using technology. EcoCash will be like your orange money in Senegal. And then, so we are managing in our own small ways that are relevant to the Zimbabwe situation. Now, on a bigger scale, you see, when we went into serious financial issues as a country, one of the key signals was electricity shortages. The industries closed down. But you'd see men still going to look for work in the industries. Why? They have to be strong enough for their families. They are working, they're spending the whole day trying to see if there's work, but there is no work because the industries are closed, because there is not enough electricity generation in the country. But what did we do? We started cutting down trees to have firewood. That this is now on a residential level. Back at the houses, the wives, the children, we are chopping down trees, leading to, the climate, some of the climate issues we're having. But with technology, now there is gas everywhere. And then there was a lot of issues with gas is expensive. What do? We now have solar installation. That's all moving with the times. And now I'll tell you, the solar business is blooming. Why? People are adapting to the situation. People are using technology to adapt to the situation. But why that has led now is there's an interesting part that sort of worries me in terms of values and principles that are being eroded. Like I said, I want to talk on unity, innovation, and cultural pride in relation to our theme for today, in resilience. There's a new trend where people are making a living from content creation as a business, as a way of managing. People started out maybe in COVID. They're trying to remain strong given the lockdowns, which is stressing people. And now content creation in itself is become a source of income. That's embracing technology, social media. In doing so, our cultures as Africans, as Zimbabweans, are being spread across the world, yes. But at the same time, we are also imitating other people's cultures. How good is that? We are seeing people doing stunts and these acrobatics. You'd be shocked to say this is an abomination in my culture, but we're seeing that's becoming normal. Oh, in a move to be relevant, I suppose. But for our cultural pride, is that right to be doing that? I have no right to be asking that question, but I still worry over where we are going as Africans, as Zimbabweans. I would say, we refer to Mbuya Nyanda, one of the people who led the Chimuring, the liberations. They would say, if Mbuya Nyanda saw this, she would be crying in her grave. Because is this what our fathers went to war for, to liberate us from colonialism, from everything? But we are colonizing again ourselves. We are becoming slaves to technology as well. We are becoming slaves because of our physical positions. I'm in Australia now, I'm doing funny things. Why? Why should I change myself just because of my locality? Why should I do that? Is that being resilient? What's making me change? Why should people change? Where is the spirit of resilience going to? The spirit of Pan-Africanism, the spirit of cultural pride. Yes, we need to embrace innovation, but we need to remain true to our values, true to our principles. But again, that's a personal choice. I think my 15 minutes are up.
Yes, thank you. Oh, wonderful. Thank you for keeping to time. And thank you for giving us a very, what I would say, a wonderful dimension from Zimbabwe, and the issue of people trying to decolonize themselves after the struggles of the forefathers. So let me thank you so much. We'll come back. I mean, please, the audience will give room for questions and interactions. But let's finish with all our panelists. And next, let's go from Zimbabwe and quickly run to Tanzania and go and greet our Swahili brothers and sisters. Maria, you will speak in English. Sorry, I won't allow you to speak Swahili today. But
Why not? Karibu.
okay.
I can do it in both.
Karibu, karibu, jambo, jambo.
Hapana. Asante, thank you for
Asante sana.
giving me this
Yes,
space
thank you.
to share my 2 cents. I feel like my conversation is going to be quite in line with what Chen was discussing from Zimbabwe, because I don't have the academia background that the professor had, which still ties into my more experiential outgoing. As I said at the beginning in my introduction, I am a children's author, and I published my first book, and it stemmed out of the pandemic, as most projects came out. And at that time, I was based in the Netherlands, but I had a longing to tell my story and to share. I was working at an international school at that time and working with kids around the age of 7. And we had said, we're going to read them stories from our homeland. And I remember I only had a handful of books that really depicted Tanzanian culture and its richness. And I actually had no book in Kiswahili that was a bilingual book. And that actually was where I said, you know what, I've always said I wanted, to write a book about my culture, Tanzanian culture, that is, and in Kiswahili as well. And it was through a book I read, which is a favorite. It's called Lala Salama, a Tanzanian lullaby. And I read it to my students, and one of them pointed out a kanga. And if you don't know, a kanga is one of the traditional, very well-known cloths from Tanzania and the East African region in general. It's kind of called the speaking cloth because it usually has a little proverb or a saying written on it. And this little child, who was of Moroccan French descent, was actually born in Nairobi. And so he said, Miss Maria, I know that. I know the kanga. And so the conversation started with that. And then I said, oh my goodness, every household in East Africa, really, especially the coastal region of Kenya and such, we all have had interactions with a kanga. And so then I wrote a story from this. But to be able to do that, I wanted to connect with a Tanzanian illustrator specifically, because I didn't want to have to explain the nuances or the feel and the shared cultural understanding of what the kanga is in order for her to then render the pictures to make them emotive enough for young children to pick up on. And so through media, through technology, and I met a friend of mine. Her name is Teddy, and at that time she was based in China, in Beijing. And so the two of us, using technology, were able to then connect and begin our storytelling journey together at that time. And it's within that I started to see really the depth and how wonderful this tool, either a computer or even just a cell phone, has become to majority of people. So now going into Tanzania specifically, there's so many ways that different projects have come up that are using technology in an innovative way, from projects like the Schule Direct, which then connects students using SMPT texts to receive test questions and practice questions just using a phone, whether it's a smartphone or just a regular phone. Another one, which is more in my line because I love the arts and storytelling, it's Ona Stories, for example. They create virtual reality and augmented reality projects that immerse people to different parts of the country telling our history. For example, they have a beautiful piece on Kilwa, which is a whole hub that is not talked about enough in history in terms of trade and generally in the East African coast. And they really take you into the ruins, and even if, you feel like you're there. And because of technology, we're able to do that. You don't have to no longer take these long trips or say, oh, I've read about it in a history book. I can't even really fully picture it. I'm able to view it because I have access to YouTube and a link, and they have done the rest for us by creating that virtual augmented reality series for us. And another one which has really stepped up recently as well is with Mkuki na Nyota, which is a publishing house that is based in Tanzania. They've started a series together with the Alliance Française called Kalam Salam, and they're giving a platform to storytellers of all generations to come and share their pieces. And it's beautiful because we're talking about resilience and embracing technology, and how does that help us preserve our history and our storytelling directly from our, without them putting all of that together for us or creating a platform for us, we wouldn't have it. And so, for example, one of the things they did recently was a combination with one of a young photographer who is up and coming, called Vanessa, and she did a whole series on Singeli, which is a local like street dance, everything. It's just a burst of color and movement, and it's just beautiful. But it's something that someone on the mainstream might not have seen, might not have actually celebrated, because Singeli is also looked upon back in the day as something that is very low class. Like, oh no, we don't twerk and do all that kind of stuff on a bigger platform. But it's the way of life, because other communities within our country do that on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. And so for us to experience that on a platform, which has then taken it even wider, and they went and showcased all the way to France and had an exhibition, without the technology that we are leveraging at the moment, we would not have been able to do that. And yeah, there's so much that is coming out of using what we have and moving with the times. I feel like, at least in Tanzania, there's this new energy that we feel right now in storytellers and creatives, where they're leveraging these tools. A smartphone is now their window or their channel to get the word out there that this is happening, rather than what's already, cleaned and sanitized for the media use that we're used to. And so, yeah, there's a lot of leveraging of social media and how people are using that to tell our stories. And filmmakers in Tanzania, going on that trend of storytelling, they're opening doors to tell our stories or the history from our point of view, because even our textbooks that have been used in schools are very one-lensed. And all of a sudden, we're getting stories from ancestors of people's, like the warriors who fought in the Maji War and the revolution, the revolts. And so now you're getting, hey, my ancestor's grave was robbed because the Germans wanted to take the bones to go and do research on. And how do we then do that? So it's all documented, but now from the lens of the Tanzanian ancestry. And to me, that's part of this conversation where we're saying, technology is here to assist us to preserve our knowledge and our stories. And so we should not, obviously there's always a downside to everything, but I am trying to look at the positive light in which it has really pushed things ahead, at least from Tanzania. And there's lots more to share, but I don't know how I'm doing with time right now.
Yes, yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Just 5 for now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, but in that sense, to wrap it up, my whole focus was for people to embrace the technology, and we've been really good at that. Whatever was thrown at us, we picked it up and went for it. And of course, I've just mostly focused on storytelling, but then if you go into the agricultural and economics as well, I think you touched upon it with the money, with the mobile money, and how it has really changed the way economics and banking is happening. Banks are actually trying to compete with the mobile money, with the mobile companies, because it's just much quicker. That technology is moving so quickly and people in different areas can connect. So that's also a positive because markets are expanding to a wider group of people, while before it was either only regionally, you could access things, but now you just quickly send money, somebody puts it on a bus, then it's sent to you. Or so the marketplace has grown because of tech. And one of the other projects that I really love coming out of Tanzania in technology, I think Professor Laid had spoken about biodiversity. So I'm not sure if some of you know, there is the banana bunchy top virus that has literally wiped out the banana plantations and industry in both Malawi and the Philippines. And what is happening in Tanzania right now, there are 2 female scientists who are working in a lab called PAWA-WAFORD, where they're creating seedlings that are disease resistant by bioengineering and using tech to help that and to map out the East African banana species so that doesn't die out, because that's been something that we are threatened by as well. And so things like that make me excited about how people are not shunning or running away from how quickly technology is advancing, but embracing it and turning it into a positive. And so with that, I would like to wrap up and say thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Wonderful perspective from Tanzania. I'm very excited about this issue of the publishing outfit on our stories, and we'll have to follow up on that because we need that for PAWA, the Pan-African Writers Association. We are into exchange of stories across countries, and technology will be of enormous help for us. And I'm very happy that technology is being used by filmmakers in agriculture and economics, and of course, to run away from this banana infection. So a lot of things are happening. Like you said, there's new energy from Tanzania. Thank you for this. And before I call in the next speaker, I just want to thank participants who have joined us online. I can't name them one by one. We have about 42 people online now, but I want to quickly welcome our sister from FemRights, and that's the Female Writers Association of Uganda. or can see you somewhere there, you are welcome. I want to thank you for the job you are doing in Uganda. Now we'll go back to the academician because the two ladies confess that they are not academicians, but from what they have said, you see that they are also powerful in their own way, giving us perspective from their countries. And have an outfit, uh, writers of African descent in diaspora, and one of them is the next speaker. He is a Cameroonian by birth, but he's been sojourning in the US. He's our ambassador in the US. He's been there for years now. I think it's time we call you back home. Anyway, so it's my pleasure to call on board Professor Bill Indy. So let's hear you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wale. And I would just like to first of all thank my predecessors, Professor Laid, Ms. Chen, Ms. Biswalo, for their riveting discussion. You know, it becomes challenging when you hear those kinds of riveting conversation and you are challenged to speak afterwards. It is like, where do I start? Where do I go? Okay. But in this conversation, this is what I'm going to do. I will share my screen with you. And I just want you to focus on what is on the screen before I carry on what I am saying. Let me see. Can we all see my screen? I just need one yes. All right. So
Yes.
I would like to start this roundtable, with the words of Alfred Lord Tennyson. I want it to ring true to each and every one of us listening. Alfred Lord Tennyson says, "The old order changeth, yielding place to the new." And God fulfills himself in many ways, lest one good custom should corrupt the world. So when I was called to talk about resilience and technological innovation as part of this celebration of the World Day for African and Afro-Descendant Cultures, I've been thinking, what can I say about technology that is ubiquitous? It is everywhere. It characterizes our everyday living. And we all know that this disparities does not come, whether this technology does not come without disparities. When we look at the technology in the global north and the global south, you would immediately realize that in the global south, technology might be very, very costly. It is a lot costlier than in the global north. But I remember also Ms. Chen telling us about what is happening in Australia, a country I have lived in and traveled extensively into. I understand that while we think of those disparities in the global south, parts of the global north are also affected. However, I have looked at technology from the perspective of technology as a tool for enslavement or a tool for re-enslavement. And I just thought in this conversation, it will be very judicious that we look at the history of technological innovations and their centrality in the business of writing and writing creatively. And I would append this with the fact that the impact or the present day technological advances, like most innovations, requires time for us to understand and grapple with it fully. There are some technological advances that has taken the world up to centuries to have a better understanding of. And if we are faced with technological advances, this actually calls for resilience. And especially in our own situation, where the technological advances has become the new normal. But we realize as writers who should always speak truth to power, who should hold our leaders, our communities, our cultures accountable, we realize that the current technological space is replete with what others have called alternate facts or alternate reality, virtual reality, fake news. And these are all things that we have to contend with. And I'll echo the sentiments of Professor Lai, who spoke before, that because we are caught in this spiral, we should not give up our culture. We should not give up what is ours. So I'll continue from there, telling you the present discussion, which aims at the historical perspective of technological innovations and creative writing and their effectiveness, as well as the challenges that they present or have presented, as well as the roles they have played in shaping our resilient thinking and thought, especially as it pertains to our industry writing and our cultural industry. Let us remember, I'm putting my eye on the time. I don't want to go above my time. I am thinking about the industrial and the agrarian revolution, which are revolutions, they are technological revolutions that, birthed the Romantic movement in writing. So the question I have is the modern day technological innovation, what fate is reserved for the African and those in the diaspora in today's and tomorrow's technologically dominated world? But I'll bring to mind very quickly that Africans and its descendants have always been amongst the heralds, meaning at the front line of technological development. However, one thing is very clear. While we herald this technological development, Africa and its diaspora seem to be dispossessed of the same technology. And we know very well that the same technology, without contributions from Africans and its children in the diaspora, would almost amount to naught. I'm saying this with some facts that I've mentioned. I said technology as we know it today would be quasi-inexistent without the African continent, without the sons and daughters of Africa, without the African diasporic descendants. In this case, I give in passing, let's look at Tope Awontona, an inventor who invented Calendly, which is a software to use to facilitate meeting scheduling for everyone without back and forth in email. You send one email, everybody said they pick their time, their slot. Let's look at another one. The Nigerian-born American, Frederick Akpogene, who invented the self-driving car. His example, these are just a few of the examples that we can list. However, to circle back to the idea of resilience, I think it is time for Africa, as this technological development unfolds, to conscientize not just the population about ways in which we could use the technology to express or to uphold our resilience, but we could also have the creators of this technology aware that they shouldn't create technologies that end up as tools for enslavement. We can use this tool lest we forget the cardinal role of a writer. We can use them as tools to expose the ills of the societies in which we find ourselves. The famed French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre clearly points out the role of a writer, which hinges and encourages African and Afro-descendant writers to embrace technology as the accessible playing field wherein the aesthetization, thematization, problematization, weaponization, and actualization are the light and catalyst that crystallize the global African and Afro-descendant literary movement. Do I still have a few minutes? Unmute yourself, Dr. Wale, because I can keep going.
5 minutes more, Prof.
All right, 5 minutes more.
Yes, we want
Right.
your students, your visitors to also participate.
All right. Okay. So I go on to saying that African writers should effectively and innovatively embrace the transition through the present disruption brought about by the recent technologies. When we take a quick look at African writing from its very onset, technology has always been and still remains an integral part of the discursive tapestry. Images conjured up in writings across genres from every clime of the African world reveals a lot on the writer's resilience and uses of technology, new and old, in aestheticizing the past, the present, and the future. I might give a few examples, and then I'll read this poem that is written here. If any of us read Wole Soyinka's A Telephone Conversation, you would realize that in his days, this is in the 60s, telephone was like we have the current internet or World Wide Web. And Wole Soyinka used that technology as a tool to expose the ills of a world gone wrong, in which during the conversation, he speaks a crystal clear English to an English landlady who doesn't know he is talking to a Black person. But when that lady discovers that this person requesting to rent a room is Black, the phone goes dead silent. So this has continued over the years. We could use many other examples. And I did pick this poem I had written This poem was written about 20 years ago. Then cell phones were not even as popular as they are today. But I published it in 2018 in a collection called Peacemongers at War. And if you look at it, it is a poem in the shape of either a bazooka or a rocket or a bomb. And I use the imagery of a cell phone, equating it to that destructive element, which, if we are not very careful with, it will lead to destruction. So the poem reads, a cell phone, what a marvel. Andrew Marvell would love to use to accuse abuse, telling his mistress to chase his distress. For today, no one would venture into the wood to hear a poet lament about the dirty garment kings need not have, cutting in halves, meager rations in our nations, reputed polluted. With this new weapon, we rely upon as one for mass instruction, not this miseducation on human ears, welded, shining like a gilded bazooka, ready for a kill, like kings executing their will. I would pause right there. I think we would have to give out, stop the screen share. And I just would like to end the conversation there. There is much more that we could talk about. So I'll give room. Let's take questions.
Yes. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Wale.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Professor Indy. I appreciate it. Wonderful, wonderful. That's why I call you last, so that you will help us to summarize a few things. And you have done it so nicely. And that poem from Wole Soyinka, A Telephone Conversation, summarizes all you've been saying, the hidden agenda of technology and the African background. Like you said, we can continue on and on and on, but we, at this point, we need to give room to our participants. Any person who wants to ask a question or give us a little addition, please, you can put up your hand. There's a device below where it says react. So under reaction, you can either put up your hand or so something. So you are free. Yes, Reba Booz. I think I can. I hope I call your name. Yes. All right.
Yes.
You have the floor. You have the floor, please.
Hi. I have
Introduce
a question.
yourself. Introduce
Okay.
yourself first.
Greetings. I am Reba Booz, a sophomore biology major at the illustrious Tuskegee University from Portland, Oregon. And I have a question for Ms. Shen, if that's okay.
For Michelle?
For Ms. Shen, yes.
Shen. Okay. Yes.
My question is, what is your driving force or motivation to have a passion for writing within the realm of technology and like the destruction of like phones and whatnot, how it can in a way trap us?
Okay. Thank you. So the way we're going to do it is this. We'll take all the questions. Please, Chen, just note the question. We'll take all the questions and then we'll come back to the responses. Okay, thank you, Reba. Any other question or intervention? Yeah, you can. I think I can see something on the chat box. It's not opening from here. What's happening again? Professor Laid, can you put off your? Okay, are you trying to share something? Please.
Yeah, it's over now. Sorry, I'm so sorry for that. That was the muezzin. I'm so sorry for that.
Okay, thank you. So we can ask yes. So from the, while we're waiting for other things, I can read some comments from the chat box. Somebody said, wow, I think this is from Peter Mwangila from Tanzania. He said, embracing technology, yes, but we're a bit flexible on our culture. We must be flexible with our culture so that we do not, for the sake of mocking our culture, but to cope with time. For example, we used to gather in firewood under the moon. Great Chinua once said, but now we don't have that opportunity to meet, but we still use online digital forum to record and share stories with kids. And wonderful this time we have opportunity to meet a bigger number of children. So yes, embrace technology, but we are still keeping our beautiful culture. That's a good point there. Any other question? Well, if there's no question for now, we can ask Jen to please answer the question she was asked. I hope you are still around. Yes, she's there.
Yes, thank you for the question and happy to meet you from Portland. Your question comes at a time where it's crucial. I think the important thing is to maintain a balance. What am I saying? I have an interest in the intersection of technology and healthcare and education. Why? Because it drives us as a people forward. Africa has been behind for a long time because we keep failing behind technological advancement. Now we have the driverless cars, we have all these, the 5Gs, some places, like where I am now, there is no 5G yet. They're just using 4G. So I'm happy I have good internet, like video reception now. But so my question is, what drives me to have this is because technology is good for improving healthcare, improving education access. It's all about accessibility, removing inequalities and equities, which technology tends to bridge. I'll tell you, telehealth, even online lessons for students, they are all possible because of technology. So at the intersection of those three, we have a balance that can give us meaning to society, to people. I was in Makudo village, deep in the Bundu in Zimbabwe, where Securico, a company, a leading security company, they launched a computer lab and internet connectivity deep in the Bundu to students, 4,000 students. Why? Because they want to bridge the education gap that's coming from the systematic challenges that are embedded in the system, where students cannot access technology, where they cannot learn at the same pace as students in the urban areas. But now they have Starlink. Now they can be at par and they can have better results and better future prospects for themselves. Therefore, in that sense, I was really moved to see students happy to have deep in the Bundu, they're having 5G Starlink internet access. And then the sad thing now is that we wrote an article. I said I'm still a junior trying to get into the research space. We did an article on cyberbullying, on mental health among adolescents, looking at countries in our developing countries and in a context of diversity stemming from, like, Australia has many people, Sierra Leone, Africans, Asians, Brazilians, etc. So we looked at different countries and saw how cyberbullying is encouraging self-harm and other ills to students and young people, adolescents. Why? Because they are trying to keep up with these perceived ideal characters they see on Instagram, on TikTok, etc. Such that now in Australia, there was a ban, I think it's coming into effect sometime 2026. Everyone who's under 16, you are banned from social media. That's a government directive that was passed in Parliament. This is Australia banning social media under 16s. But now, if I go to Zimbabwe right now, I see a 10-year-old trying to be on Snapchat. They want to be on all social media platforms. That is where we tend to worry. And then I'm really moved to see, how can we help our youth? How can we help ourselves free ourselves from ourselves at the hands of technology? It all comes to behavioral aspects, as Professor Zalani said. So I don't know, that's just the driving force to see a world where we can free ourselves from the downside of technology. I hope I answered. I didn't ramble.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Can I add
Answered?
something, Dr. Wali?
Okay, go on.
Yes, I think first of all, we have to admit that Africa is, when it comes to innovation and technology, is lagging behind Europe and Western countries in general. But this is part of history, but does not mean we have to be pessimistic about the future. I think the good strategy or approach to face technology and innovation is to adopt a leapfrog approach. And in other words, you have to choose. They have made technology available. For us, it's question how to use this technology and innovation wisely, ethically, without hurting our sensitivities, our culture, and our self-esteem. We cannot deny that the value, the added value of technology innovation, whether from East or the West, or for instance, for people who are, for the creator, for the author, now they can use computer facilities, programs, and so forth. But the whole idea, they are gaining time and efficiency and accuracy when using computer facilities. But the whole idea is how to develop it, how to write it down, and how to, of course, to publish it. So in general, we have to choose and to select any item of technology or any gadget of technology, if I may say so, and to adapt it to our culture without hurting ourselves, still keeping our personal integrity. We still keeping the independence, the critical thinking. That's exactly what we should keep in mind. Of course, bearing in mind also, as I said already, technology is not natural, but still we have to transform and to adapt ourselves without, once again, by securing our own dignity and our own integrity.
Okay, thank you, Prof. That was a very good intervention there. We have a question on the chat box, and I will read it out. Whoever among the panelists who can answer will be given the time to answer. Now, this is from Dr. Raymond. He said, thank you so much for this important educational and enlightening discussion. My question is, how can we better preserve African literature that reflects our heritage without it being lost to the Gen Z generation, considering that social media platforms now consume much of their time?
Can I really jump in there really quickly?
Yes.
Because I believe one of the things that we should remember is that the social media platform is also a platform where we can use, that we can actually use to put our literature out there. We can use the technology to hone the idea of cost-benefit analysis. First, to that younger generation, to our political leaders, and keeping them educated, right? Then keeping them uninformed. When they're jumping on social media with any platform, any social media platform, it is just because they've seen something there of interest that appeals to them, but it might not be what is in their interest. So we should make sure that when they are on the social media platform, okay, they should look for a platform that deals with cultural issues. And that is why events like this ones we've organized is important. I think we could even work towards an online database for a collective of writers and their works. We could use the same technologies to create wikis for our writers. We could use YouTube handles for African writers talking about their activities, talking about the light of their work. We could use this technology for convergent collective thinking and not group thinking. Create databases for audiobooks for the African writers, because we realize the trend. The trend is kids like to listen to music or watch things. We could transform that so we can make technology actually a passport to the future. And for the, let me say, self-promotion and self-advertisement in the sense of advertising and promoting African and African diasporic writing. It is something we could handle. And like Professor Laid said, we should think of not just doing it in unethical ways, but think of doing it ethically. Think of using these technologies as tools for critical thinking rather than tools for enslavement or tools for just transforming us into non-entities. So I might want to end there because we could go on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Prof. I appreciate it.
Before you say that, let me just say one little thing.
Yes.
Let us remember that you can't kill your soul or that of your nation or your continent. You should still hope to play a significant role in the globalized and globalizing world. Because if we don't do that, well, technology will take possession of our soul and we will not have the contribution we should be having. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Yeah.
Okay, Chen, something? Yes, please.
I just want to add 3 points to answer the question. Recently, I was listening to Dr. Tanaka Chidora's contribution on translations, and he's a critic, and most of you know him. And he was being asked, why are you translating books? What's the importance of translations? And then it answers this question. The Generation Z are on social media and doing translations. He translated a book, The Book of Not by Tsitsi Dankaremka, into Shona. Hakuna Shakadaro. Why? So that's a way of getting the Gen Z into listening, preserving our culture, because now he's translated it and now it means it's in our indigenous languages. So that's one way. And what I noted and what I learned, he said something like there is core grammar, which is common in any language, Swahili, English. And then there is peripheral grammar, which the nuance will be different depending on the context that is being said. So if you translated something to Shona or Chewa, and then it has more meaning, it has more depth because it's in the context of that peripheral grammar. So I learned that. So it's important to have those translations. It can be to English, whichever way the translations are. And again, like Dr. D said, we have to upload them on YouTube and TikTok where they are, the youth. Another thing is, I have a friend, a writer, a poet, he's in Namibia. He always writes in his own dialect, no, mainly in his dialect. And he has this outstanding poetry that he does. And I said, you know what? We need more of these. It's engaging for the children to learn. But then we figured together, there are parents who are proud that their children cannot speak mother tongue. It's their choice. They are happy. They are not teaching their children. So another issue is stemming from the guardians, from the parents. If they do not expose their children to their own cultures, then the children will not know that they have that culture. And Dr. D just said, you cannot kill your soul. That's my parting remark.
So much, Jen. Yes, Maria, before I call you, Maria, I quickly want to bring in a question on the chat box and then go back to Maria and anybody who can answer it. And the issue of cyber, I think the question is from Peter Wangila in Tanzania. He wants to know how that cyber bullying is everywhere, and it's a very critical topic, even in Tanzania. And that the situation is very worse in Tanzania. That how can it be managed? So anybody can answer that one. How do you manage? How do you handle cyberbullying? But before you answer, Maria, unmute yourself and say what you want to say.
Yes. Can I say something,
Okay.
Dr.
Okay.
Yeah, I think here the key words is digital literacy. Digital literacy. People have to understand, have to learn how to use technology, okay, in this era of digitalization and so forth. So here we are facing a situation where either you have to regulate and to introduce legislation, or we have to create our own. When we spoke about social media, this is not African issue, this is worldwide issue. That's what we see right now between social media or GAFA and Europe. So what I want to say, either we have to learn how to use it and to adapt ourselves, or to impose some kind of restriction, or let's say legislation. Otherwise, we have to create your own social media. This is, I'm talking for Africa. Now, bullying and this and that, of course, technology should not be, we should not be slave of this technology. We should not act at the mercy of technology. We are the mastermind of the technology, how to use the technology. We don't let the technology drives ourselves. We should have a good, strong command on technology and to use it in all details. And of course, when there is misuse or abuse, the law will apply. That's basically. But we don't have to dissolve ourselves, our personality in front of technology. That's exactly what we should do. Learning, understanding, using properly. That's the key solution.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Maria, can we hear from you now?
Yes, thank you. I had wanted to touch upon the loss of our stories or our heritage with this. Well, now we're already at Gen Alpha as well. But the idea of social media, and I think all of you have touched on it, is leveraging it, using it to our advantage. But what I'm not seeing at the moment is content being made specifically to target the younger generation. I feel like us as Gen X and millennials are trying to make that push and trying to be more informed. But again, with great change that is going very quickly, and as Professor Laid just mentioned, with the fact that the digital literacy is really not there. People pride themselves in having a cell phone in hand, and that's adults before they even look at like a young child using it meaningfully. And so for that particular loss, I think it's a loss that's been coming for a while, at least from a Tanzanian perspective, because there is this group that prides themselves either in not speaking Kiswahili fluently, that their children are not speaking Kiswahili, they're speaking English perfectly, and they're not sharing, even orally, the oral storytelling. And so if those are not being passed down, who is going to do it? And in Tanzania alone, we have over 124 indigenous languages. And I still remember clearly stories that my mother told me and songs because they were part of that storytelling form. But that's all being lost. And what I'm trying to say is that I feel like there has to be an intentional movement to actually either record, like you were saying, the audiobooks. I know Mkuki na Nyota at the moment have a podcasting studio that they're trying to start up, and they're trying to get authors to read even in Kiswahili, there are different accents based on what region. So depending on the story, to read it in that accent, so that we're preserving not only the language, but also the authenticity of the tongue. And so all of these things put together, I think, could create a better base, and it's a collective yeah, it's a collective effort. It's not just a one entity thing. So yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Briefly,
Yes.
I would just like to add about the idea
Okay.
of cyberbullying. Professor Light made a critical statement, and I'm almost expatiating on that, because when he talked of cyber literacy, that is educate the student, the young people involved in these activities on how they can use the internet. One, let them know it is okay when somebody threatens you to tell them stop. Let them know it is okay to report somebody who is threatening you. Let them know it is okay not to give your information to people. Let them know it is okay to raise red flags when it is needed. So cyberbullying, let us remember, people are only bullied. People are only bullied when they allow themselves to be bullied. They don't need, and there should be consequences for the bullies. So there should be laws in place that if you were caught bullying, it could end up with you serving time and things like that. So I think that is something that we have to take into account.
Thank you. Well, Prof, we have just a few minutes more, and I want to quickly chip in another question, and that is on the issue of legislation. I think it was Jen who mentioned that in Australia, 16-year-olds, I don't know, in a part of Australia, 16-year-olds are being banned from social media. Do you think this kind of legislation can work in Africa? Because sometimes when an African country tries to bring in legislation, is the people, I mean, they usually start abusing that government, calling them dictators and all kind of names. Or can we also put some legislation to restrict access to the social media, maybe depending on age or what? Who wants to say something, please? Is it possible? Has it been done before? Okay. Yes, Peter. Peter, you want to say something? Peter, you can unmute yourself.
Yes. Hello, everybody.
Thank you. You're
Do you
fine.
hear me?
We can hear you,
Okay.
yes.
Yes, we have a tendency here in Tanzania where parents are giving smartphone tablets to kids so that they can keep them busy while they are doing their own business. So I'm trying to imagine in that situation, if a parent see that taking care of a kid instead of playing with her or with him or getting her some little study or telling stories, instead he just shift that burden of parenting to a tablet or a smartphone. So I'm trying to see, are these people really will take that registration of, let's say, less than 16 years old, keeping them out of this mess, and try to see it? Well, it's really paining. So that is what I was trying to share with the world, to see if we Africans are adapting it. Are we ready into parenting? Because I can see, if you talk to our relatives in, let's say, in USA, in some other developed country, I can say, you can see they're even deciding who is to go to work and who is to remain behind taking care of the kids. But the situation here in Tanzania particularly is quite different. If you don't have a helper at your home place, then you better send the kids to school. So we are escaping that kind of that responsibility of parenting. So that is my general
Yeah.
commenting. So
Okay.
let me hear from
Thank
others.
you.
Thank you.
Yes,
I like the
Maria.
discussion. Is so good.
Thank you,
Thank
Peter.
you.
Peter has brought in a very important issue, which some of us who are grandparents are a bit worried about. Sometimes I see my grandchildren being given tablets to keep them quiet. So maybe Maria, want to say something about this?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to touch upon that, and that is not just a Tanzania problem. I can tell you that for sure.
Yes, exactly.
That is a worldwide problem at the moment. Even here
Yes.
in Denmark, you go out to a restaurant, parents want to have a conversation, they throw a screen in front of a child. And I must say I'm guilty of it sometimes as well, where I need a moment and a screen can distract them. But what I'm saying with these technological advances, with social media, with tablets and phones, younger and younger children are getting access to them. But it's you as the parent, as the adult who's given the kids the access, you need to be educated enough to know that there are controls that you can put in place. There are limits that you can put in place. I have two boys, 11 and 9, and they have a screen time limit, for example, and each parent does it for their own. They don't have a cell phone for obvious reasons of social media and interactions there, because I don't think they're ready yet at that age. But in Denmark, majority of the children, starting from about age 7, when they start going to school, they all have a cell phone. I have a class of 18 students at an international school, and 16 of those students all have cell phones. And it's funny that we're discussing this because we just had a conversation about safety online, because I could see that some of them didn't even know how to report when it was harmful to them. So then it's really the parents educating themselves and being good digital citizens themselves, because I also see it in parents who cannot put their gadgets away. And if that's what kids are seeing, then they're going to emulate that. So instead, even with books, we keep saying, yes, we're moving with the times and reading books and audiobooks and all of this, but there's so much research behind how reading a physical book, turning the pages, all of that helps to remember and to retain information. And so there's a lot that, it needs to start from the parental level to come down, to be disseminated down. And when it comes to the comment about, well, if all these legislations were to happen in African countries, then yes, probably you'll hear he's a dictator, he's what. And I definitely know that it has happened in our country at one point where WhatsApp got scrambled and people were not happy about it. And people found ways around it, because as much as you might think that people, might be behind technologically, they're not. So they found a way around to circumvent the system. There were some Instagram accounts that were blocked in Tanzania because of some of the rhetorics that they were putting out, but people found a way around it as well. So governments are able to do that, but there's definitely going to be pushback. And it's not just stopping at the children, but I feel like
Yes.
the parents themselves and the adults.
Wonderful. Well, we've had a wonderful time today. And in closing, I will just give the panelists 2 minutes each for their final statements. I will start from Chen. Any takeaways for us as we go home?
Yes, thank you very much. And to all the other panelists, thank you. I learned a lot also from the audience. Thank you so much. I just want to end with what has been alluded to already, the establishment of sort of a tech hub or collaborative cultural archiving of projects that will help in preserving our culture and keeping up with technology on a sane level. We need to keep our sanity, our sanctity, and our pride. So parents, guardians, it is our duty to be good digital citizens and pass on our culture to the youth. That's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria, 2 minutes, parting words.
Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity. I definitely learned a lot from my fellow panelists, and my 2 cents and my takeaway from this is that I feel like there's an energy on the continent at the moment that is very eager to preserve our history and our heritage and culture, and the brilliant voices coming from each corner, as I can see. And so coming up with a collective, putting our forces together, I think that will be more helpful and create a more unified movement, because they say there's a saying about, the single drum does not really create the resounding voice. And so if we all unite and do it together, I think our message will get across much, much quicker. And of course, in partnership as well, because we do not work as silos. And so, mtu ni watu, as we say in Kiswahili, community is what we need. And I feel like there's such a great community here as a start of. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And that is what PAWA is all about, the Pan-African Writers Association. We have members who write in Swahili, Arabic, English, French, Portuguese, and some Spanish from the Equatorial Guinea. So we are here to collaborate with writers on the continent and to also support the work of translation and all these things. So we are here to help you. Somebody was asking Maria, how do I get your book, Kanga Yamama? So maybe you want to send something to the chat box. You can send your link to the chat box for them to get it. Professor Lahid, 2 minutes.
Yes, I
Last
think,
words.
first of all, we don't have to be impressed by technology. That's to start with. Technology is here to be at our disposal, to help us, not the other way around. We don't have to surround it to technology. Technology is here to help us, to provide facilities for us, to relieve us from some routine things. So in other words, we have to be proud of ourselves, of our culture, of our personality, and to have this coherence between your personality, your culture, and how to use technology. And of course, I am very pleased and delighted and proud of attending this webinar, and hope more to come for the next future. Thank you very much, Dr. Wali, and all the experts around in this webinar.
Thank you, Prof. My regards to our friends in Nigeria. My greetings to all of them. Yes. Now we go to Professor Indy. Yes.
Hello, Doc. Oh,
okay. Oh, God. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, that's Mr. Appa from
yes, I've been on the call listening, and I would also say that I'm sure most of you will be aware that UNESCO has this project on called the General History of Africa. That is, when member states started becoming independent, they actually charge UNESCO to help the countries to rewrite Africans' history from the point of view of Africans. So what I would say is that you can take a lot of inspiration from that, and also start putting out books, from that perspective. And that would help our young people to know that Africa used to hold its own before enslavement came in and, actually put us on a different course. But there's hope. So I hope that the writers can go to this project and then get inspiration from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ampa. We surely will do. UNESCO has been a very strong supporter of PAWA. And interestingly, PAWA attended the first UNESCO conference of NGOs in Paris last December, courtesy of UNESCO. So we learned a lot from that place. And we also made new friends and with. Before I call Professor Indy, there's a question from Hilda, which Professor Indy can take with his last statement. And the question is, he said, sometimes, what is sometimes bothersome is the question how we can join manufacturers of technology effectively to reduce the gap of our technology consumerism. This English is big. Yeah, Hilda. Anyway, I think what she's trying to say, how do we reduce the gap of our access to technology by working with manufacturers of technology? I don't know. Professor Indy is in the US, so can do that, can answer that question.
All
with
right.
his last statement.
Thank you. I was going to address that in my last statement without even knowing there was a question on the chat. The first thing I would like us to understand is that the creators of this technology, those who have given us the technology, the Steve Jobs of the world, They never allowed their children to have access to technology because they believed that the technology they've created kills creativity. So in my concluding remarks, I am just going to advise all those on the call, all the writers, that our responsibility as writers is for us to draw on the social functionality of this technology as a coordinate component of our creative works. If we remember somebody like Kamara Lai in The African Child, or sometimes translated, The Dark Child, he decries that the shift from the ancestral technological prowess has been perturbed by cultural upheaval. And such shift, he said, made of the African goldsmith a thing of the past. So that with the rise of new technologies, we know without doubt that it has radically changed the ways in which African and Afro-descendant communities operate. In a technologically driven world, we must strive to maintain a competitive advantage, and to do so, we must stay above the noise. I am going to take Ms. Maria Biswalo's point of we must be intentional. I use that word almost on a daily basis. Intentionality. We must be intentional to stay above the noise. And I will just close by saying African and Afro-descendant writers need not forget that writing today, more than ever before, entails and calls for a steadfast commitment. When I talk of commitment, it means you don't have to blink. You don't have to be browbeaten. You have to write, speak truth to power. Use the technology when you have to use it, and ditch it when you have to ditch it. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank PAWA, thank UNESCO, thank WAFORD, and thank to you all my panelists, because you made this day and this time worth every second of it. Because I quaffed with so much interest everything you said, and I'll be sure to watch this presentation over and over again and maybe use it in my classrooms for teaching. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Prof, for that wonderful last statement. Before I thank the panelists, I want to make a few announcements. The first is that the proceedings of this webinar has been recorded, and it will be shared to those who participated and maybe on other platforms. And secondly, to say that our next webinar will be on February 2nd, and on a very important topic, biography writing. How do we write biographies? How can we make money from writing biographies for ourselves and for other people? And what are the dangers of writing biographies? Because it's not all rosy when you write somebody's biography. Litigations can abound. So we're going to bring up a legal expert who will teach us how to avoid all the legal loopholes. And then we're going to, like I said, disseminate the proceedings of this. Secondly, we have just made a call for a book to celebrate the former Tanzania president, Magufuli, and the editor is Professor Indy. To be a bilingual collection, English, French, well, trilingual, English, French, and Swahili. But the Swahili must be interpreted for us so that we know what is being written. So the call is until February, middle of February. Please help us to disseminate this information We want poems, articles, remarks, short stories about the life and times of President Magufuli, because in PAWA, we always try to document activities of some of our leaders that we believe were outstanding. We've done a book on J.J. Rawlings, former president of Ghana. We've done one on Wole Soyinka, the Nobel laureate from Nigeria. And now we are moving to Tanzania. So we are expecting a lot of responses. On this note, I want to thank the panelists, Professor Liza Zaglami from Algeria, wonderful man. Anytime I'm in Lodgias, he's always at the airport to welcome me, like as if I'm a visiting president. And he makes sure that I'm well fed. Thank you, Maria. Before the conversation, Maria was sending me some messages on this is my first time. But when I saw her performance today, I think maybe she was just deceiving me. This was not your fault. I mean, you've done excellently well. And Chen, thank you for the perspectives you have brought in from both your country and from where you are currently based. I mean, it's nice to hear that an advanced country like Australia can have a legislation banning under 16 from social media. This is something that Africans should learn from. And then, of course, our regular big man, Professor Indy, you always, this your leopard behind you. He always frightens me each time I look at it as if you look so real. And Professor Emelaji could not join us. He had some challenges with technology. I mean, he joined a few minutes ago and he was bounced off again, but I want to thank him. And then to thank the audience for the wonderful, you stayed so much with us and you also participated. Your interventions, your questions have been wonderful. And I also want to thank my colleague, the Assistant Program Officer for PAWA, Abbas Mohammed, who is behind the scene. Abbas, are you still there? I want to thank you for manipulating.
Yes,
And
I'm
yeah,
still there.
want to see your face. Please, let's show your face and let us thank you.
But the camera is not coming.
Okay, don't worry. So
How about
Abbas, thank you, Abbas. Well, Abbas is from Sudan and he works with us in PAWA. He's also a bilingual person, Arabic, English, so that we balance everything. So on this note, I want to thank you all and wish you a wonderful remaining part of the day. Thank you and see you again. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.